wanted to welcome everybody. My name is Evelyn. I am so excited to be your moderator for today. But before I introduce Sarah, I would love to hear from you all, those of you who are in the audience. So if you see the chat, please drop in the chat. What is one word or one emotion that you have when you are asked to either promote yourself or talk about your product or your features in public? I see a lot of people chiming in. That's great. Defects, preparation, anxious, opportunity. That's awesome. And then just a few housekeeping items before I hand it off to Sarah. First, update your profile. That's how you can exchange information with others when we do the Blender in a little bit. Where you can do that is when you see the top right corner, your pictures, you click on that, and then there should be an edit profile link for you to edit your information. Also, secondly, most of you are already in the session tab. So that's just a little bit underneath your profile picture. You will see event and session. So we are mainly using the session to interact throughout this event. You'll use the chat and we can see people's questions and I'll monitor them. But we will save the majority of the questions till the end of this session. So we'll do Sarah's presentation, and then we'll break into a one-on-one Blender. And then for the last 15 minutes, we'll bring everybody back for Q&A. But keep your thoughts and opinions coming. I'll be monitoring the chat, but then we'll save all the live questions for Sarah at the end of the session. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Sarah Sprague. She's a COO at BACH, and she's also a speaker in previous Women in Product Conference. So take it away, Sarah.
Thanks, Evelyn. I also was going to add in a few other personal tidbits to introduce myself, in addition to how you just did it. Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. We have a lot to cover in a short amount of time, so I'm going to jump right into it. But a little bit about myself. I say if you know 5 things about me, then you know everything you need to know. So I have a younger sister. Her name is Allie. I think she's the coolest person in the world. I have always considered myself a nomad. I don't like to be in one place for a long time. Most extremely in 2019, I lived in a different country every month while I worked remotely as a PM, before working remotely became cool. I fell in love with product pretty early after school, but especially a few years out when I started moving into startups and just like loving the game and the challenge of it all. I was actually, while I was nomading, I was diagnosed with leukemia at the end of 2019. So I like to call out that my 2020 was a little special. I've learned so much from it, and I'm trying to, normalize having kind of hidden health problems and not being weird to talk about in the work environment. And it defines who I am. And speaking of that, I'm motivated by challenge. It's one of the reasons I love product. If you really want to get me to care about something, tell me I can't do it. And that's really all you need to know about me. So I'm going to jump into the content today. We're talking about PMing in public, and I'm going to get to what that means in a second. So to start out, this is a basic concept that I think we are all familiar with, which is a product manager's job is to deliver a product that people find value in using and that works for your overall business. Okay, sounds simple in concept. We all know it's really hard in execution. But what I want to talk about today is actually the piece that makes this really hard that I think a lot of times people overlook. There's lots of things that are difficult in figuring out what is that product. How do I find the value people want? How do I build that right product? What are the parts of the product that it needs? What is my business model? How do I make sure that my product vision and what I'm doing day to day tie to it? There's a lot of hard work in what we do every day. But I would argue that actually the hardest work oftentimes is people related. I'll give you a minute to read this comic and maybe laugh. I won't hear you laughing. I hear silence, but I will hopefully know you're laughing. Because not only are we trying to do the hard job of being a product manager and all the aspects that entails, but we're doing it within an organization. And that organization could be small, medium sized, could be really, really large. And that organization is full of people. And people have different priorities. They have different goals. They have different motivations. They have different understandings for what the heck a product manager even does and why you even exist. And they have different personalities. And oftentimes I find that when I'm talking to product managers and me myself, you actually fail or feel like you're not realizing your full potential of your product, not because you don't have the skills and the tactics, but because of the people. And it's hard to be able to do your job within this organization. It's not the skills, it's actually like the accomplishing it within the org. And so my assertion and what I realized over years is that it's going to be easier for you to do your already difficult job if you have strong credibility within your organization. And so on top of your job, your actual job is from day one to put in intention and time into building that credibility across your organization, because that's going to make it easier to sell to the people your vision, or to make a hard decision and get the backing, or to not get the backing and still have people's trust. And the way that I've started to term how I build that credibility is PMing in public. I am a reality star fiend. I'm not going to be ashamed of that. I should put that on the 5 things you should know about me, honestly. So to take inspiration from one of the original reality TV families, PMing in public is the reason people love the Kardashians is because they let you into their life. You were in their house. You were there when they woke up. You got what they were portraying as just like a regular day in the life. You're just watching them. And so you kind of like trust them in this weird way because you think you're like watching their real life. It's not a shiny version. They allegedly don't have a script. They're not whatever. They're just in their day-to-day life. But at the same time, they know that you're watching. They're intentional about what they're showing you. They know what they're doing. And so PMing in public is a similar concept. You want to do your job, but you want to do it in public. And you want to do it, you want to show your work, and you want to do it for the entire organization to see. And that's how you build credibility over time. And that's how people are going to grow to trust you. But you need to do it intentionally. You need to know they're watching, and you need to do it in the right way. And you need to do it at the right level, depending on your org, your product, who you are as a person, all of these things. So PMing in public is, unfortunately, not a simple single answer. I don't have the magic shortcut for you. Unfortunately, there actually are no hacks in life. You need to go through the hard work, the emotional labor. But PMing in public, it's a posture. Okay, it's not a framework. It's not a fill in the blank. Here's how you do it. But it's a way of approaching product management every single day within your organization and, frankly, within your life. That over time, if you do it consistently and you do it gradually and you just show up every day in this posture, it allows people to see how you do the work, to understand it better, and to trust that you are doing the work so that you are able to move a little more fluidly across the organization once you've gradually built up that trust and that credibility over time. So I have 10 more minutes to share some details about what PMing in public actually looks like. And I'm really going to try to stay on time because it's something that I'm personally practicing when giving talks. Okay, but it's a lot to try to get through in a short amount of time. So the way I wanted to approach it today is, instead of talking about a lot of things in generalities, I'm actually going to give you some very specific examples, but I'm only going to do it if you promise to take these as inspiration. So my goal is to show you inspiration, to show you screenshots, real ways that I've done this in my different jobs as a PM, sometimes at really early stage startup companies, sometimes being the first PM on a team of like 10 people, Other times it was a company that started at 50, grew to 200. One time it was like a 500 person company. And then a different time I started my career at a literal 100,000 employee company. So I tried to pick examples from all different sizes. The point is, don't do this exactly. This is not something to copy and paste. This is inspiration for you to take and say, hey, oh, that's cool. I haven't thought of doing that. Here's how I could twist it, put my flavor on it. That wouldn't work in my organization, but this would. So this is tangible inspo because I want you to be able to not just, say, hey, that's a cool concept, but I'm not going to change anything because of it. I want you to actually leave here saying, here's one thing I can do differently, literally starting tomorrow because I listened to this talk. So we have 74 people in here. So I'm going to try to go to the chat and see if I can get some interaction, which is saying, I'm going to show you some tangible examples. But first, can y'all tell me, what are some things you do day to day as a product manager? Like, what are some of the skills and the actual like tangible work that we do as PMs in order to help us ship features, come up with a product vision, make priority decisions? Like, what are some of the skills, the hard skills of product managers that you do every day that maybe your org knows you do, maybe they don't? Listen, writing tickets, interviewing, talking to users, storytelling, clarifying. Oh, this is great. A/B testing, relationship building. Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. So a lot of this, user research, influencing, event planning. Okay, cool. So I'm seeing some themes. Luckily, we all have a similar idea of what PMs do. So this is in line with what I'm going to talk about next. So yes, part of the thing that we do all day, every day as product managers is we talked about A/B testing, some other things. We look at data. We want to understand, how are people using our product? We want to learn from that. So what do we do as PMs? We learn from data in order to make better decisions, and we focus on the impact of the features we're making from that data. So data is important for many ways. It's an input, but it's also an output for us. Here is an example in a screenshot. I just made it bigger, so hopefully you can see, of if you have a posture of PMing in public and you are already looking at data to make and inform your decisions, and you're already looking at data to decide if the things we did worked or if they didn't work, and to decide what to do next. Here is a really small kind of step one obvious example. Maybe a lot of you already do this, of how to PM in public. This is a ticket template that I used to use. This was a really early stage company. You can probably tell because it's a really lightweight ticketing system. Not really fancy like Jira, but basically every single ticket that I wrote as a product manager, only the engineers saw this. So this is about building credibility within your engineering team, arguably maybe one of the most important people to build credibility with. This is every single ticket I wrote. I not only included the event tracking we needed on it, that's kind of just like basic requirements, but most importantly, I included the impact. What is the impact in terms of tangible metrics this thing we're working on is going to have? And I would separate, this is just how I thought about it. You don't need to think about it this way. Leading indicators, meaning what are the things that should change immediately once we release this feature, and lagging, what are the things that are going to take a little longer but are that more company important? And to take it to the next level, every single ticket linked to the Mixpanel reports that already had these metrics listed out on a dashboard. So why is this important? Why is this PMing in public? An engineer might not ask you every single time, have you thought about how we're going to measure the impact of this? Why are we doing this? But if they see every single time that you've thought about it, you're doing your work, you have a reason, you have your stuff together, and you are thinking about how you're going to measure it, I guarantee you that builds credibility and trust over time with the engineers, that they know that you are thinking about this stuff and you are being a disciplined product manager. I could talk about each of these for this long, but I'm going to move on. Obviously, I'm getting too passionate about my data and my tickets. Next thing, and this is a totally different example for how to PM in public on the data theme. So one time I was at a company that I felt like I was just like speaking into a tunnel and no one was listening. I was repeating myself over and over again about how important it was to figure out how we get people to actually start making purchases. People were loving our product. They were engaging. They were doing all this stuff, but we weren't monetizing it well enough yet. And I was having the engineering team really focused on it. They were rallied around it, but the rest of the team was not. The marketing team, they were all doing their other things. They had kind of similar goals, kind of different goals. Like sometimes the company doesn't do a good job aligning it. So I was like, okay, I could keep on repeating myself over and over again every week at my stakeholder meeting and saying the same thing 20 times, or I could turn it into something I know they're going to pay attention to. I created this bot. This might be too noisy for a big org. This might work for you. Everyone loves Slack these days. Again, take this as inspiration. I created this bot, named her Bridget. Don't know why. I worked in the wedding industry at this time, so picked a fun emoji with a veil on it. Every single time someone purchased something, we streamed it into Slack. And it shared a lot of details about what they purchased. But not only did I make it automated, but I added a little story with it. Okay, at the beginning, every single purchase, I wrote up the user story by clicking on my little Mixpanel links, what led them to book, so they can see in public how I learned things. I'm not just learning things arbitrarily and sitting up in my ivory tower deciding, oh my gosh, we're going to work on these things. I analyze every single user stream, and that's how I get my insights in order to make decisions. And that's why I can make prioritization decisions. And that's why you can trust me to do so. And so, yeah, I didn't do this forever. That's not a good use of time, but I did it for the beginning so they can start to see how my process thinks. And then I started calling people out when it connected to projects they were working on. And, you know, originally it was kind of me talking to myself, me and Bridget hanging out, but eventually the whole company started chiming in. And this is now literally to this day, still one of the biggest parts of our company. Bridget has transformed into Britney Spears. We have a nice little GIF going on. It's one of the things that really has defined our culture because it's user focused and it allowed people to see how we think through projects. Another thing a lot of people talked about is PMs. We talk to our customers. So much user research. We do interviews all the time. This is a really small example for the people who are doing them. Include other people in your interviews. As a PM, I always want to be there. I do not want to replace myself with someone else. If you have a UX researcher also helping you organize it, that's great. I really always try. This is a screenshot of how I used to block my interviews always at the same time every afternoon, every week. And then I would always invite team members to join me. They could either sign up easily themselves or I would DM them. And I would say, hey, engineer, hey, you haven't joined in a while. Come sit in with me. Or someone on the marketing team, or whoever you kind of want to engage the most. Let them see how you ask questions. Let them see the thought process. Again, letting them behind the curtains, showing your work. And then the last thing to talk a little bit about, everyone kind of mentioned this in chat as well, is what we do as product managers is we take all this quantitative and qualitative data, we connect it all, and we use that to build the product vision and to make prioritization decisions. Maybe you are working at the level at which you're building the vision. Maybe you're building a part of the vision and kind of like the roadmap around that. Maybe you're working at a more feature level, making prioritization decisions. Whatever it is, you have to connect all this information and you have to make calls. What I would encourage you to do, these are a few different examples, is include your stakeholders and the people outside of the product development team in this prioritization process. That does not mean you need to take all of their input and decide based on them like that first cartoon we looked at. But this means you can make it really fun. I literally used to do drawing exercises. I would be that weirdo who bought a box of crayons, a box of markers, and throw 6 stakeholders in a room and give them a drawing exercise. Or when we were doing a team-wide all hands, I would literally not let people exit unless they wrote on a sticky note one idea for the product roadmap. I don't care what the idea is, good, bad, whatever it is, you get a drink once you give me a sticky note with an idea in it. A little more formal culture, I used to write newsletters, email newsletters, but you would have to opt in to receive it, because if you're at a really large organization, you don't want to be getting spammed by communication all the time. So allowing people to opt in, but then taking them through your thought process in the emails, not just sharing metrics, but sharing them insight, sharing them learning, sharing half-baked ideas, opening up the curtains behind the PM day to day. So I would have dug into those last few examples a lot more had I had the time. I know I rushed through them a bit, but just to hit on the key points of PMing in public, the point is that this is a posture. Again, there's so many examples and ways you can do it. You can probably come up with a million ways to do it better than me. But the key is that I'm asking you is, first, don't wait for your manager to ask you to look at the data or talk to the users, include stakeholders in the ideation process, all the things we're talking about doing. You do it not because someone's asked you to do it and you know someone's watching for it. You do it because it's the right way to do product management and you love it and you're a disciple of product management. And then when you do it, you don't do it in private. You put it out there for the entire team to be included at the level that they wish to be included. And that's when the thought needs to go into it. Because even if you think no one's paying attention, even if you think no one's noticing if you're updating the roadmap and including data, someone is. And then as you do this, you need to think about, this is about being disciplined. This is about consistency, showing up and acting the right way as a product manager with the right inputs over time. That is what's going to build true trust and credibility and therefore influence in your organization. And the last piece, which sticks to what you're going to talk about in your blenders or your mixer one-on-ones, is I'm asking you to do it in your own style. Because if you try to do it like me, it's not going to work. People are going to think it feels fake and you're forcing it and it's icky. So you need to figure out how to do it in your own style, and you need to use this as inspiration. So before we go into blenders, Evelyn, I should jump into this exercise next, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So before we go into blenders, what we're asking is, based on that PMing in public inspiration, everyone gets 2 minutes to do a mini self-journaling exercise. So the question for everyone to assess themselves on, you could write on a piece of paper if you have one, in Slack, in wherever on your desktop, in your notepad. Answer these 4 questions. Evelyn just posted them in the chat. How engaged are my stakeholders in the product development process? 1 through 10. No judgment, judgment-free zone, whatever pops into your head, quick first answer. How bought in is my leadership team to my product direction? And then number 3 and number 4 aren't on a scale of 10. Just answer, which stakeholder, individual, or overall team do you think you have your strongest relationship with? And which do you have your weakest? Take 1 to 2 minutes to answer this for yourself. And Evelyn will tell you how the one-on-ones will work and how you're going to use the answers to this in those discussions.
Thank you, Sarah. That is a lot of super valuable information. And I'm very excited about this journaling exercise. So for everyone to join the one-on-one blender, on your left panel, you'll see a couple of the icons. When you see a handshake, the 1-to-1 blender, you will click on that. And when you click, it will ask you, do you want to leave this session? The answer is yes, because I encourage you. You learned so much from Sarah. Now it's time to put them into practice and brainstorm with someone or to meet someone. So please click on that 1-to-1 blender, leave this session. We'll bring everybody back in about 20 minutes. So you'll have 2 sessions with 2 people, 1 person each. And then at the 20 minutes, we'll bring everybody back to do this, the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm definitely resonating with some of your tactics, and I'm just curious to hear more about how do you balance the public part with the private part? Because when you don't know what's going on yourself, how are you trying to communicate confidence when you're still trying to figure it out?
Yes. So I will asterisk this with, I do recognize that it definitely depends what I'm about. What my answer is going to be definitely differs a little bit depending on the values of your organization and the type of company you're at. So I know that different companies accept kind of like vulnerability and flaws and all of this in different levels. But my answer to that is actually the most confident leaders and people I've ever worked for or with actually don't have all the answers and often get it wrong, but they're willing to do that and they're confident while they do that. So I think that is honestly the hardest part of all of this. It's the intangible. I noticed some people were saying, even at the beginning of this talk, that when they have to do this stuff in public, they kind of feel like an imposter. I think the point is to lead with that almost. Now, you don't want to go to an extreme. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I think you trust the process. If you trust the PM process, which is I'm going to learn from this quantitative data, I'm going to learn from user interviews. If I sit with it long enough and if I actually invite perspectives from different people, I know we will come to an answer. I might not have the answer now, but I trust the process. I know I will come to an answer. And maybe I'll say something that's wrong, but then once I say, hey, that was wrong. And now, because of this new insight we learned, I've realized it was wrong because of this. And so we're going to do that instead. I guarantee you that will lead people to trust you more than were you right the first time. Because then they get to see how you're making your thought process. And they're like, oh, she's not just over here magically coming up with it over here because she's the product manager. She gets to make decisions. She's actually going through a process. And so I would say that showing those flaws, even though I know it's scary, and especially before you're confident, it's even like harder to do it. But that is actually like what is truly going to build the trust, because they see you learning live. And so I think you just need to trust the process until you trust yourself, and then you trust yourself.
Yeah, I love that. That's good. Trusting the process.
Yeah. I have I was just talking to the PM who's at the BACH, the company I'm at right now. She's probably sick of hearing this, so she's probably laughing when I'm about to say this. But I have this drawing that I show everyone whenever I feel like they're not trusting the process. I have this sticky note. I'll draw it while I do it. Okay, so it's like, this is the decision-making process. And I think about this as the product process as well. Windy, like you think you're seeking out to get more clarity at the beginning of the process, but you actually end up getting more messy. It's windy. Like you're talking to users. Oh my gosh, I thought this, now it's that. I get more data. You're in the wind. But if you trust the process and do it over time, it will straighten out and you will come to clarity. And so whenever people are feeling like they're in the wind and they start doubting themselves, I just tell them, you're in the wind. Like, it's not you. It's not, you're in the windy part. It's supposed to be less clear. But I've seen you get to the straight part so many times before. Like, I know you're going to get to the straight part. You need to know you're going to get to the straight part. But like, let people see the wind, because then they too will start to learn, oh, this is how she gets to the straight part clarity.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's a lot of windiness, so it's good to just accept it and know that it will straighten out at some point.
Yeah, exactly. Embrace the wind.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you answering that.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you, Caitlin. And I am bringing you up next, Meredith.
Hi. Thank you for this session. It's been giving me a lot to think about. My question is more about how to incorporate like the culture that you're in. Because sometimes how I would like personally be is not the culture of like the environment I'm in. Specifically right now, I'm actually having a hard time of like getting people to care. Like the engagement's very low, which I've never really experienced before. I've experienced people caring too much or having too many opinions. And so getting like the engagement level up is what I'm challenging. It's what's challenging me right now.
Okay. How big of like, how many stakeholders, or like how big of an org, like what volume are we
our whole organization's like 400 people, but the core stakeholders that I work with is probably like maximum 25.
Okay.
And like
25 is a lot.
we have like Slack channels and emails
Yeah.
and like it's
Have
kind of
you-
a startup-y vibe, but everyone's just doing their own thing.
Right. Okay. So this 25 might be a lot to ask you to do this, but like, how much have you tried engaging with them one-on-one? Like, how much do you feel like you know them individually?
Not super well.
So it's asking a lot of you, but my approach might be to find the people who could care. You're not going to convince 25 people who don't care to care. It's like marketing. Like, you need to know who you're for and who you're not for. And the people who you're not for, you shouldn't try to convince them. You should spend your time trying to find the people you're for and sell your product to them. So I would say of those 25, there's gonna be a few who care. They just you might not know. So like how it's almost like being strategic about your stakeholders to say which ones are worth your time, and like literally writing it down, mapping it out, and being like, what's my strategy? And like getting to know those people and get to know like, what do they care about? Maybe they don't care about what they think you're talking about, but like, what do they care about? And then how can you change the way you're referring to them into the things they care about? And then gradually they will care. So I don't think you'll get to all 25 too, but I have faith that you could find your ways in. Like, who are the maybes that you could work to turn to a yes?
That's awesome. Thank you for that. I appreciate the advice.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Meredith. I share the same struggle. Sometimes people just don't care. All right, Phoebe, you're up next.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Shara, for all your good advice. So I have a question on, I work on internal systems and products. So I work on business enablement. So my end user is all the post-sales team members.
Okay.
So I feel like my engagement with the end users are pretty good. So I can schedule end user interview with them whenever I want to. But I want to know is there any ways that I could show that impact to a higher level, like senior leadership level? And what are those ways to show that impact? Yeah.
Great question, and great to be thinking about. What is your product team structure like? What is your relationship with your boss? How is their visibility to the senior leadership? Like, what's that dynamic like?
I mean, my boss is the director of product, and then with the focus on business enablement. And then for the senior leaderships that I was talking about, more like the CS leadership or the product leadership or marketing leadership. So those folks that they are direct person using our internal system. Their team. Yeah.
So the reason I ask about your boss and the other, because I think different organizations, depending on how hierarchical they are and how it all works, like you definitely want to take that into account, right? I think you definitely want to think about how can you build the relationships and get the visibility to the leadership and in the other parts, but also do it in a way that's not like going to feel strange to like your boss and their peers at the higher level. So I think the way I might approach it without knowing all the details about your org is to be candid about that desire with your manager and see how you can actually work with them, have them work with you. Like, people like to help people. So usually when you reframe it like that, to say, I'm working on my XYZ skills. I really want to get better at this. Like, I would love to do that by having more visibility. Like, what, I don't know if it's maybe the team leads already have a regular meeting that you could present in once a month, or maybe there is already email newsletter or something going around that you could do highlights in. Like, I'd be curious, someone who you have a close relationship with at those levels, who know the systems and know the best way to engage with those people. I'd love to see how they could become a partner in helping you amplify it in the right way, because trying to do it in the wrong way might come off not the way you intend it. So you kind of got to get the inside scoop, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Yes, definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks for the question. That was a good one.
I do have a second one, but I want to also give the opportunity to others. So up to you, Evelyn.
I don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead, Phoebe.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I work on internal systems. So when I talk about impact or when I talk about KPI, it's just hard to, it's not directly tied to the business outcome like revenue or retention, customer expansion, things like that. So it's hard for me to find a good way to promote that impact that we have on the internal teams.
Right.
And do you have any suggestion on that?
Okay, it's definitely, I understand how it could be one level removed or a couple levels removed, but do you feel you yourself understand the connection to the ultimate company goal? Like if we do better at this metric, it will eventually drive this, which will eventually drive revenue. Like, do you understand the connection?
I mean, definitely there's a path. Like I can see that connection, but I say one way is probably some of them I were able to identify. Some of them I probably still like need to figure it out how I can tie it back to all the way to the business impact. So that's the challenges in there as well.
So that's where, honestly, that's where I would start. I like writing things down. I'm a big Notion fan, Google Docs, whatever you like. Like before I go to other people and start trying to influence, I need to have it super clear in my head. And usually the first time I write it is kind of a mess. And then I rewrite it and then I distill it. And then like I realize, oh, I didn't fully understand it as well as I thought I did. And now I get it really succinct. So I would start with you and getting it super clear in your head. Wait, like how, it's a great question you're asking. How is what we're working on connected to the ultimate company goals? If you can write that down super succinctly and completely agree with it to yourself, then I think you can slowly start to find ways like that will come to your mind of how you can then show that to other people. But if it's not fully right in your head, you're not going to be able to market it to other people either.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. I have two people in the queue. I'm gonna pronounce your name wrong. Shanetti, you are up first, and then Wallace, I'll bring you up next. I'm sorry for pronouncing your name wrong.
Hi, thanks for having me here. Great session, Sarah, and thanks for moderating this, Evelyn. And you pronounced my name right. So my question is, so specifically when a lot of time goes into putting together a roadmap across different stakeholders, when there are constant changes to roadmap, primarily because there are a lot of external dependencies or leadership priorities that are changing, how do you ensure credibility? Because all of us put in a lot of effort to get that done.
Totally. So do you feel when you have to communicate changes that negates your credibility?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about why. Talk to me about why you think that brings down your credibility.
So when I put together a roadmap and we involve a lot of stakeholders during that process, we evaluate why certain thing is a priority and why certain things fall below the cut line. So that's how we evaluate the roadmap and finalize based on the bandwidth and things like that. So when that is set in place and when things get moving and some other priorities which we didn't anticipate, like external team dependencies or some leadership priorities which we were not aware of at our level of visibility, when those come up, how do we explain that scenario, especially because those stakeholders were also invested a lot in this particular feature?
I think as you explain that, the key thing is you received new information. And new information, like we're getting new information every single day. And like literally every single day, I'm smarter than I was the previous day. And if I don't change my decisions based on new information, then you should decredit me. Like that is actually a more risky thing for the business for you to say, I have new information about other teams' timelines a new user insight, whatever it is. And instead of doing something about it, which is the harder thing to do, I'm going to actually just keep things the same because I don't feel like telling people about it. So actually you're doing the responsible thing. So I think the two things I always try to do is, one, roadmaps. I always have an asterisk on it. Again, annoying stuff I repeat all the time inside my organizations are like roadmaps, asterisk, subject to change. Roadmaps are not stagnant things. They are always changing. They're a method to help with prioritizations. And yeah, for bigger orgs, you can only, you don't want to constantly be talking about them. So you need to do planning in chunks, but it's like, this is a snapshot. This is like the snapshot in time priority. So it's like setting expectations so people know it's not a failure when they change. Like, so setting that expectation. And then when you do change them, I think what I always try to do is highlight, like I said, here is the new information we received, and therefore here is the change. So it doesn't feel like I missed collecting this before. Something is different in the world than it was 2 months ago, and therefore we're going to do a responsible, proactive thing and change our plans. So I think it's a communication thing.
Right. Makes sense. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. That was super helpful. Oh,
I'll add one more thing, actually. Because in addition to that, sometimes still people are like, this is ridiculous. It's changing all the time. Sometimes I think you can also like just call it out. Like, you also, I know it seems like we're changing all the time. Like, I know, like, I address it because you're not embarrassed of it. It's like, it's also hard on you and it's hard, but it's like, I'm actually like happy we're changing all the time because at least we're an organization that listens to people. So I think it's also like, don't be ashamed of it or embarrassed of it, like kind of like embrace it.
Right. Makes sense. I have one more question, but I'll wait for Wallace to complete and then be back. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Wallace, I'm bringing you up next. But before I do that, I just wanted to plug for everyone to take the event survey. So you'll see chat, people, and Typeform. Typeform is where you can click and fill out the survey. You learn a lot from Sarah, and we would love to hear from you. So while I bring up Wallace, take some time and fill out that survey. Wallace, you are up next.
Evelyn, I'm so impressed. You are a star moderator.
Thank
you are definitely beating me at my past moderation work.
+1 to that. Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
So my name is Walise.
Cool.
Yes, thank you. And I see, Sarah, that you used to work for PBS. I used to work for New York Public Radio. So shout out to public media.
That's awesome.
Yes. So my question for you is, so many of the questions are coming from people who I could tell were definitely more on the senior side of things. I am working on a team of very senior experienced product managers. So I'm the most junior on there. And because I am partnered up with a lead technical product manager, my question is, what is the best way to collaborate and be useful and not get in the way, not be an eager beaver with this leader in our team, because so much of the product management resources that I read out there are the messaging is assuming that you are the product manager, but in this situation, I am not. So what is the best way to work with this team?
That's a great question. Okay. I think, what is your, like, how candid, transparent, open, like, is your relationship with the lead product manager?
By pure coincidence, we used to work at the same company prior to this one. Yeah, but I was still transitioning from media to technology. And so now he's meeting me fully in technology.
Right. Okay. So if you guys can't tell by now, I'm one who likes to have direct conversations. So I would say the first step is to ask this question to that person. Because I think, again, getting them on your side in actually helping you find your own voice is going to be the best way for them to then also like amplify that. And then also make sure you aren't stepping on toes and all of that. So I could give you ways to do it, but I don't know them and I don't know the org. And I think it's really like, sometimes the easiest way to give feedback or to ask questions is simply the way we said it to a friend when we like weren't actually overthinking it. So like literally the way you just asked me, I would ask them the next time you're having a one-on-one or whatever it is. And I would say like, this is your team. I'm here to help. Da, da, da. I want to get better in these areas. And so like, I want to show my voice in a few ways, but I want to do it in a way that helps and not like detracts from you. Like, what are some thoughts you have? Like, maybe it's not even a concern of, maybe they're like, oh my gosh, please go for it. Like, that'd be great. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I think having that conversation with them, and maybe there are a few things you can start to take over in terms of the communication, or like some of the sub processes a little more, like having a little more ownership over them. They might be happy to do that. They might not be. It depends how they reply. I don't know them.
Yeah, no, I have a feeling it's gonna be more on the please stay. Well, one thing from what I captured, he's not the biggest fan of writing, and we work at AWS, doc writing culture. Like that's no PowerPoint presentations. You have to write. So I said, I'd be happy to write. For media, I'd be happy to write this this one pager explaining the what we're going to do next. And he's like, yes, take it on, go ahead.
That's great. Okay, that's good. I think more of that. And then like, if it is pushing it to say, I don't know the culture, I haven't worked at Amazon yet, but it's like, if it's not just writing, but now getting to talk through it in the meeting yourself or whatever it is, like, I feel like having the conversation up front about like, this is my intention, I'm looking for ways to do this, then he might naturally more like suggest them rather than you always having to like call them out.
That's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you, Wallacey. Thank you. Sarah, you did an amazing job. I feel like I'm just sitting in the hot seat with every question, like requester. It's super valuable lesson.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Would it be okay? I share your Substack blog with everyone.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess with that, thank you all for coming on a Tuesday evening, and I hope you learned a lot. And thank you so much, Sarah, for like your knowledge drop. It's incredible. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Evelyn. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. See you next time.